Hi guys and welcome back to the Mighty Blues. My name is of course Cameron and welcome back today to another live stream. It is the game review. Everton 1, Brighton and Hove Albion 4 at Goodison Park last night. Still haven't quite gotten over what we all witnessed at Goodison Park this time 24 hours ago, or around about this time 24 hours ago. An utterly embarrassing performance by Everton, an utterly disgraceful performance by Everton, a heartbreaking performance in many ways as well, and a performance that for me will see Frank Lampard with a pretty difficult task to turn this around now. I know obviously we've had a lot of sort of rumours and reports throughout the course of the last few hours or so as to whether or not Frank Lampard's future will be at the football club. Dominic King with the latest bit of news is to state that Frank Lampard will take charge of Everton's FA Cup fixture on Friday night against Manchester United. However, he has had talks with Kevin Thelwell today regarding his position. The decision ultimately, of course, comes down to Farhad Moshiri, but you can already see that those discussions and that those thoughts of potentially sacking Frank Lampard and starting the hunt for a new manager are at least at the early stages. Whether or not that decision will be made after Friday night, depending on how that game goes, and if I'm being honest with you, I can't see anything other than an absolute embarrassment on Friday as well. I don't know whether or not they wait until after Southampton. I'm not too sure, but it very much felt last night like that it was sort of no way back for the manager. And I say that not because I think Frank Lampard is the biggest problem at Everton. In fact, I think Frank Lampard probably isn't even in the top 5 problems at Everton. But I seen a really, really good tweet earlier on this morning, and it said Frank Lampard isn't the problem at Everton Football Club, but he also isn't the solution. And at the end of the day, as the old saying goes, if you're not a part of the solution, you're part of the problem. And Everton, at this moment in time, given where we are in the league table, given that we're in January, given that we're in the transfer window, Everton really only need to be focusing on solutions and not problems. And look, we obviously had quite an emotional instant match reaction last night, and I will reaffirm a lot of the points that I said in that instant match reaction regarding the board and regarding changes that need to be made at Everton Football Club. Of course, I've had 24 hours. I've calmed down a little bit. I'm running on a lot less emotion than what I was last night. And if I'm being honest with you, I'm just drained with it all, because once again we've witnessed an Everton performance, and this season for me just has so many similarities to last season in the sense of that it was a shock last season. Where we were was a shock. Okay, we hadn't particularly finished the season prior brilliantly, obviously finishing 10th under Carlo Ancelotti, but we had periods in that season where we were on really good form. We were second at Christmas. We were at one point in a real fight for European football until the last couple of months of the season when we threw it. But we were more than safe, and there was never, ever, ever any sort of question or worry or indication about relegation. And even in my lifetime, barring the early David Moyes days, in which I was a little bit too young to remember, we've never really had a threat of relegation in my 24 years supporting Everton. As I said, I know we had that season, when Rooney left, but I was a little bit too young to remember that. Other than that, we've had moments, we've had weeks where in December where we've thought if we don't make a change now, then we could be in a relegation battle. But it's only ever been a 1 week or a 2 week thing, and then we've made a couple of changes, whether it be a new manager or we've brought a player in January, and things have improved and we've managed to finish the season strongly. So last season was a real shock to everybody. When we brought Rafa Benitez in, we had a relatively stable start to the season. I won't say it was a good start to the season, because I think it was a stable start to the season. We then were beaten 5-2 at Goodison to Watford, and I remember it distinctly. The toxicity in the stadium at the time was something that and I think a lot of Evertonians feared was inevitable with Rafael Benitez as the Everton manager, and that inevitability was that we would lose a game heavily, our performance wouldn't be good enough, and the fans would turn on the manager. And I remember thinking at that point, whilst it was still only early on in the season, I think it was in October, whilst it was still early on in Rafael Benitez's time as Everton manager, I remember thinking, there really is no way back for him now. there's absolutely no way back, because it's almost like the fans had turned that corner. They weren't particularly on the side of Rafa Benitez anyway, but it was almost like they'd turned that corner at that point, and it was never going to be any way back. And Everton dilly-dallied, and Everton continued to lose games and put, abstract performance after abstract performance in, and then ultimately, the manager was sacked in January. We spent 3 weeks of the January transfer window running around like headless chickens looking for a new manager. We brought Lampard in on deadline day as if he was some sort of new signing, and we ended up basically having a woeful window. I know we brought in Mikalenko and Patterson, who, in the long run might be good signings, but Dele Alli and Donny van de Beek were complete useless players, and we survived that season based on a couple of individuals, one of whom isn't at the football club anymore, and the fans realising the severity of the situation and coming together to combat that with the bus greetings and with the flares and with all of that sort of stuff. What really, really worries me about this season is that I don't think that will happen again. And yesterday really felt like that Watford game for me. It felt like the point where everybody had just had enough. The toxicity in the stadium, and warranted, considering we'd been beaten 4-0 by Brighton. And listen, Brighton are a decent team. I know I've had a lot of comments from Brighton fans and from various other, maybe even Everton fans about me comments on Brighton yesterday. I said Brighton were an average team, and let's not get it twisted here. I've got no disrespect towards Brighton and Hove Albion whatsoever. In fact, I've got a tremendous amount of respect to Brighton, because Brighton and Hove Albion are a football club that are ran brilliantly off the pitch. They ran brilliantly on the pitch. They are a football club that do everything the way it should be done in modern day football, from recruitment to contingency plans for managers, contingency plans for players, to the way in which they play, their style of play, their system. Their recruitment's perfect. There was barely anybody on that pitch in a Brighton shirt that I knew of yesterday. Players worth 2-3 million here, 3 million here, 4 million here, 5 million here, who will come in, can do a job, know what they're doing, can create chances and can score goals. Brighton Football Club, Brighton and Hove Albion Football Club at the moment are everything I want Everton to be. Everything I want Everton to be. And I am beyond jealous of what Brighton have got, because without trying to sound too big-headed and too bigoted and too, sort of too conservative, shall we say, there's just not a valid reason in my head as why I can compute that a club the size of Brighton, which, let's all be honest with ourselves, they're nowhere near as big of a football club as Everton are, can be that far ahead of a club like Everton in terms of their operations and the way in which they ran. But that doesn't mean that Brighton and Hove Albion are an unbelievable footballing team. They're amazing and they're so good. Brighton finished 9th last season. There's 20 teams in the Premier League. As far as I'm concerned, 9th, 10th, 11th, that's average. That's mid-table, that's average. It's not unbelievable. It's not awful. Okay, you could use the phraseology good. You could use the phraseology decent. You could use the phraseology amazing, dependent on, what their expectations are. But for me, I would say finishing 9th in the Premier League would be average. Now, don't get me wrong, if Everton were to finish 9th in the Premier League this season, it would be a miracle. But typically, over the last 5 years, if Everton would have finished 9th 4 years ago, 5 years ago in the Premier League, as I said, that's average. Brighton won't be challenging for European football this season. And Brighton will also be nowhere near a relegation battle this season. So therefore, the word I use, and some people mightn't choose to use this word because football is glorified in this day and age, and it's either absolutely the best ever and unbelievable, or it's absolutely woeful and it's shit and it's the worst thing ever. There's never any real middle ground with football in this day and age. I see Brighton as a decent, average Premier League team, and I refuse to sit here and say that they're anything more, because they're not anything more. And that's not a disrespect to Brighton, because for Brighton's expectation, where they are is fantastic. For a club the size of Brighton, and the fact that they were not so long ago in the Championship and didn't look like getting promoted, for them to be where they are is amazing for them. But it doesn't mean that they're an absolutely amazing footballing team. What they are is a well-organised, well-drilled, well-coached, and structured football club from the top to the bottom. Everything that Everton Football Club are not. So it's no disrespect to Brighton. I'd give a left arm for Everton to be where Brighton are now. I really, really would. But that isn't an indication on how great Brighton are. That's an indication on how far Everton have dropped. And I said it yesterday in the instant match reaction, and I'll say it again. This isn't prime Manchester United. It's not Liverpool. It's not Manchester City. It's not prime Chelsea. It's not Arsenal at the moment. Decent teams, average teams, good teams, whatever phraseology you want to use. They're not unbelievable and they're not shite. So they're in the middle somewhere, which for me is average. They now come to Goodison Park and without even having to get out of second gear, wipe the floor with Everton. And that is heartbreaking. Because I grew up in an era of David Moyes where we weren't even that great. We weren't challenging for trophies. Okay, we got to Wembley a couple of times, but we never got anything out of it. Okay, we finished in Europe in a few years on the bounce. But again, we had a couple of half-decent runs. But even not being a massive success, even not being a team that won titles or challenged for titles or challenged for trophies, under David Moyes, decent, average, mid-table Premier League teams would not come to Goodison Park and be able to wipe the floor with us in the way that Brighton did yesterday. And that's not me saying I want David Moyes back, by the way, because that was a long time ago. My point is, that's how far Everton have dropped off. I remember a time when I would go the game, and I've had a season ticket for 16, 17 years of my life. I remember a time where I would go the game, and unless we were playing Man United or Liverpool or Arsenal or Chelsea, those four teams, I would be absolutely fuming if we'd have not won a game against anybody else. And even in those games, I'd be fuming, but I'd have more understanding that those are the better teams in the league. Anybody else, and I had no, and this was when Brighton were in the Championship, they might have even been at League One at this point. Anybody else, I simply wouldn't stand. And none of us, I think I speak for most of us here, none of us would have stood mid-table Premier League team coming to Goodison and doing what they done yesterday. Teams just didn't do that to Everton. Certainly not at home. Maybe away, because we've always been a bit shit away from home. But never, ever at Goodison would teams be allowed to do that. And it's proven, because if you go and ask any player, any ex-footballer who played in those early 2000s or the mid-90s or whatever it is, and the mid-90s weren't very good either, but those early 2000s Moyes days, if you go and ask a footballer that played in that era what one of the hardest grounds to play at is, I bet you they'll say Goodison Park. Because that was what it was like. We just used to win there. The crowd was up for it every week. It was amazing. And teams wouldn't beat us in the way Brighton did. If you went and asked any current footballer what the easiest ground to play is at, they'd say Goodison Park. One constant. The same chairman. And members of the same board. Obviously, Denise Barrett Baxendale wasn't here under Moyes and Managerial and stuff, but the one constant is the board. They've overseen the decline of this football club that, quite frankly, is sickening. And in any other walk of life, they would have been sacked from their job. If Apple, as in Apple, the company, would have been ran the way Everton Football Club would have been ran, they would have gone bust. If Microsoft had been ran the way Everton Football Club would have been ran, they'd have gone bust. If these massive companies would have kept incompetent people making decisions at the top of them, they would have gone bust. But for some reason, Everton's owner, Farhad Bashiri, believes it's acceptable to keep these people at the top of the football club. A 77-year-old chairman who shouldn't be anywhere near Goodison. Nowhere near Goodison. And he shouldn't have been anywhere near Goodison from the moment he stood outside and had the bollocks to say to a fan, you've had good times in the last 27 years. What? We got to one final and got absolutely battered. Great. Brilliant. What a time that was. We went to a couple of semi-finals and got beat a couple of times as well. Absolutely brilliant, that. It's incomprehensible for me that the owner can look at what is happening and deem it acceptable. Now, the only conceivable reason I can think of is because he's waiting for the new stadium to be built. He doesn't want to, ruin a relationship with Mr. Kenwright or Miss Barrett Baxendale, and he just wants to keep that relationship, wait for the stadium to be built, and then he's sold. Because as I said yesterday, and I will say it again, Everton will be relegated this season. And nobody can change my mind. There is only two outcomes in which Everton do not get relegated this season. One of them is that we are taken over and we happen to be taken over by a multi-billionaire who's going to come in and within the next 26 days, 27 days, is going to wipe the board, bring a whole new board in, and bring in 3 or 4 signings. That isn't going to happen because a takeover takes months, sometimes even years. It doesn't take 26 days to do. So that's literally impossible. Impossible. The only other option, as I said yesterday, is one of Todd Bowley or Daniel Levy being stupid enough to give us an incomprehensible amount of money for Anthony Gordon. We then sell Anthony Gordon, and then we trust the recruitment team and Kevin Thirlwell to go and spend that money correctly on attacking players who can come in, who can create chances, and who ultimately can score goals. Not just a goal scorer. Been linked with Danny Ings today, and it actually makes me a little bit sick that I'm sitting here even contemplating Danny Ings being a good signing for Everton, because A, I can't bear the kid and he played for Liverpool, and B, he's injury prone and 30 odd years old, but he has got 2 feet, and at the moment it doesn't seem like any of our forwards have got 2 feet. Dwight McNeil definitely doesn't have 2 feet. Neil Maupay never gets the ball for him to be able to do anything with it, and Dominic Calvert-Lewin is either doesn't seem interested or is clearly not fit. But Danny Ings on his own wouldn't have been good enough because we'd need somebody to create for him. And we're putting our trust in the same people, whether it was Kevin Thirlwell, whether it was other people in the recruitment team, whether it was Frank Lampard, whoever it was, somebody sanctioned the decision to spend £20 million on Dwight McNeil this summer. Somebody sanctioned the decision to spend £10 million on Neil Maupay. And whoever it was, they're still in the job because nobody's been sacked since then. So, without being too doom and gloom, without being too negative, Everton will go down this season. I'm saying it really as a form of therapy, to be honest with you. And we had 800 odd people watching on the Instant Match Reaction last night. Massive thanks to everybody that did join us and watching. It was very much a form of therapy for me because I almost say it as an acceptance. You know, the first stage of recovery is acceptance, I think they say. And I'm saying it as a level of acceptance of right, okay, I've accepted that this is going to happen. I've accepted that we are more than likely going to be relegated. And now I can deal with it and I can get over it over the coming months because I just don't see a way out of it. I just don't see a way out of it. And the reason being is because, as I said, there's so many similarities to last season. That Watford game last season at Goodison was pretty much pictured the perfect. Pictured, exactly the same as what last night was. But what won't be similar to last season is we won't have a kid up front who plays through injury and gives it 110% and scores goals and wins games in Richarlison like we had last season. And I firmly don't believe we'll have fans that will turn up with flares and Greek coaches in the way that we did, because last season it was a do or die. Last season it was we're in this situation, so we've got to do absolutely everything we can to get out of it, and then we can address it once we're out of it. This season, I think it's just going to be sheer anger, because the fans won't want to do that twice, because no lessons have been learned. And once again, that board that put us in this position last season and got away with it because of the fans and because of a couple of players that turned up and performed individually, have gotten away with it again, because once again they hid. Well, they're not gotten away with it again, but they hid. So ultimately, are we surprised that we're in this position? Because I'm not surprised that we're in this position, because what should have happened at the end of last season was those absolute jokers at the top of the football club should have been bounced out of the football club, but they weren't. They hid behind the Palace game, they hid behind the limbs and the emotion and how great is this and how great, and we're going to have a brilliant new season, and that was a blip and it was a one, and I won't let it happen again and all this nonsense. But nothing changed. Nothing changed. And now we're a season down the line. We are in January. We are in desperate need of 3 forward players, or certainly 2 forward players and a creative midfielder. And yet we're exactly where we were last January, where we were in need of these players, but the whole focus was around the manager. And if the club's decision is to stick with Frank Lampard, which I personally believe is the wrong decision, Because as I said, what I saw at Goodison yesterday was that of a situation where I just don't see a way back for the Premier League manager. His record is atrocious. We've won 3 games all season, and yesterday he showed in that first half that tactically he's just not good enough. And as I said, there's only so far that emotion and fist pumping and this, that and the other will get you. And the fans won't match it this season like they did last season. I really don't think they will. And rightly so, because we did that on the basis that things would change and nothing changed. So now it's just pure anger. But if Frank Lampard is going to keep his job and that's the decision the board have made, then back him. Back him. Because I'm reading articles from Dominic King today saying Frank Lampard is you know, there's been talks, but at the moment he will remain as Everton manager. We'll back him then. What are we waiting for? We're on the 4th of January. We need a striker, we need a winger, and we need a creative midfielder. What are we waiting for? If it's, well, we don't really want to give him the utilities to use, or that because we might end up sacking him, then sack him now. If that's your thought, sack him now. What are you waiting for? What are you waiting for? If your problem is we haven't got the money because of financial fair play, fuck it. Fuck it. Go and spend 200 million and deal with the ramifications later. Go and survive. Go and spend 200 million on great attacking players. Survive by 15 points and deal with a 3-point deduction at the end of the season, or deal with a fine at the end of the season. Everybody else does it. Think Manchester City follow financial fair play? No. Do you think Newcastle will follow financial fair play? No. So what's the reason? Because I can't help but feel like it's just a shit house. We're going to put it off. We'll put it off. And you know, if I'm sitting here on Saturday and Everton have lost to Manchester United and Frank Lampard is being sacked, then I'll be furious anyway because Everton will have lost the game of football. But I really will be asking the question of why didn't you do it after Brighton? If the club's idea is we'll give him Man United, we ain't going to beat Man United away from home. We haven't beaten them away from home for 10 years. 2013 was the last time we beat them away from home. Notoriously, even before that, we hadn't beaten them for 10 years before that. So 1 win in 20 odd years of Manchester United. We ain't gonna beat them, and it could very comfortably, the way they're playing, be another arse-handing. So if it's gonna be, we'll see what happens with Man United, and then we'll make a decision. Sack them now, because either way, we're not beating Manchester United either way. As Hernandez says, take the European ban. We're years away from being there anyway. Exactly, take the fucking ban. I don't care about being in Europe. Take a 10-year European ban. Just get us out of this situation. I'd rather us go and buy Kudus and a belter striker and another creative player and have a 15-year ban from Europe, but be 8th and 9th every year until then. And then once that ban's over, we can push them for it. I just don't see a way out. And the Blues says they won't get, and this is a good point by the Blues, says they won't get sanctioned though, we'll get 20 points deducted because we're Everton. I understand that, and to be fair, I agree with you. I think we probably will get a massive point deduction. But you know what? We're going anyway, aren't we? Realistically, we're going anyway. So we either go, flaccidly, for lack of a better phrase, and don't spend the money and go down with barely a fight, because that's what's happening anyway, or we go and spend a couple of 100 million, and if they turn around and say, we want to give you the points deduction and you're going to get relegated, then we were going anyway. As I said, I struggle to see a way back for the manager. I do. If I'm being honest, I do. And I like Frank. I think he seems a decent fella. He's not good enough tactically to be the manager of Everton Football Club. The passion, the fist pumping, all of that has ran out now. And what we're seeing now is a manager that ultimately, tactically, has been exposed as not being good enough. Now, the list of managers that are available are also most not good enough. Roberto Martinez is not good enough. West Ham on the verge of sacking David Moyes for the same reason as we're on the verge of sacking Frank Lampard. So why David Moyes would even be in the conversation is beyond me. Wayne Rooney's name, pardon me. Sorry. Wayne Rooney's name has been thrown into the hat. whether or not Wayne is ready for this situation, how I would have to err on the side of saying he isn't, because there's not anything to tell me that he is. Sean Dyche, is he capable of doing it? Burnley sacked him because they were in a relegation battle and they didn't believe he was good enough to get them out of it. I understand that the pool of managers isn't great at the moment. I get it. But I also don't think that who would we get in is a valid reason for keeping a manager that isn't good enough. And I like Frank, and Frank may be a good enough manager one day, and Frank may be a good manager ultimately at a club that are more stable, that have got a bit more progression about them, that have got a bit more structure, that know what they're doing a little bit more. He might be able to go in and he might be a brilliant manager. But for a club as to where we are now, I just don't think Frank is up to task at the moment for the second season on the bounce. And once again, Everton haven't got a contingency plan. Once again, if Frank Lampard is to be sacked, it won't be a, right, well, we're sacking Frank Lampard and we're going to go and get him in straight away because he's our man. We know we're going to get it in. It'll be, right, we're sacking Frank Lampard and now we'll start a two-week recruitment surge for the new manager, and we'll end up with Roberto Martinez because he's free. He used to be he's best mates with Bill Kenwright. I read it today, Dominic King saying Roberto Martinez has admirers within Everton. Bill Kenwright. It's Bill Kenwright. Bill Kenwright is the admirer of Roberto Martinez. It's as simple as that. That in itself should be enough reason for Bill Kenwright to be bounced out that door and never let back into Goodison Park ever again. Again, clubs around us, Brighton, no issue with them. Really, really, really well organised football club. Really, really well managed football club. Really, really well coached football club. Graham Potter left. He was their manager for years. He brought them up. He built them to what they are now. He would left to go and, I think it's fair to say, probably out the blue for Brighton. I don't think they were expecting it. Certainly not at the start of the season. And what did they do? They went and got Roberto De Zerbi from, where was it, Sampdoria or somewhere like that. And he's come in and he's doing a really good job so far. Aston Villa bit the bullet with Steven Gerrard, a young, progressive English manager, one that, everybody wanted to see be a massive success, wasn't doing the job for him, so they bit the bullet with him and they've gone and gotten a manager who is an absolute clinical serial winner, especially in Europe, and look at them. They're doing all right. Okay, they're still a bit ropey, but they'll be all right. Tottenham last season brought in, what was his name? Espirito Santo, and realised after a few weeks it wasn't working, so bit the bullet with him. Didn't dilly-dally about, didn't fanny about, didn't, sit on their hands and think, well, what decision are we going to make? They made the decision and he went and got Antonio Conte. And okay, things are a bit ropey with Antonio Conte now, but they made that decision. Everton, once again, sitting on our hands. And as I said before, and I will say it again, nothing will change until the people at the top are bounced. Nothing will change. We can sack Frank Lampard, and that may or may not be the right decision. We could sack Kevin Thelwell, and that may or may not be the right decision. Nothing will change until Bill Kenwright, Denise Barrett-Baxendale, Farhad Moshiri, and okay, whilst Graham Sharp mightn't be, particularly at fault in terms of for what is going on at the moment at the football club, bounce them all, get rid of them all, because they're all complicit to it. So get rid of all of them. And until we get rid of all of them, and the owner, to be fair, the owner needs to go, the owner needs to sell. Nothing will change until that. Nothing will change until that happens. But I don't just want it to seem like I'm targeting Frank Lampard because he's the easy target. Because as I said, Frank Lampard is far, far, far from the only issue with this football club. And I actually distinctly remember sitting here after the Watford game, actually. The way I've just said there were similarities to the Watford game. I distinctly remember sitting here doing a live stream, getting pelted in the comments about how awful Rafael Benitez was and now he should be sacked and he's the worst manager ever. And I remember sitting here and saying, yeah, he probably isn't the greatest manager. He probably isn't good enough for Everton. He probably does need to go. But he's by far not the biggest issue with this football club. And look, fast forward 12 months later, I'm saying the same thing. Frank Lampard probably isn't good enough to be the manager of Everton, but he is by far not the biggest issue with this football club. Having said that, Frank got it wrong yesterday. It's as simple as that. Frank got it wrong. The decision to change to a back to a 4 at the back was baffling, in my opinion, because it was an arrogant one. It was one of, well, we're at home and we're not playing as good of a team as Manchester City, so we're going to have a go at them and we're going to get at them and we're going to try and, impose ourselves a little bit, which some people would respect because, Evertonians like to see Everton on the front foot and attacking teams, and especially at home, getting at teams and giving it to them, etc., etc. The reality is, I think Frank Lampard seemed to forget yesterday that this group of players are shite. That none of them can create a thing, and that the forwards can't take chances that are created. So whilst it might have been the right idea to go at them or to, we're at home, so let's have a little bit more of a go, let's not sit back, you can't do that when you've got a playing squad of players that aren't good enough to do it. And that's what we saw yesterday. That's exactly what we saw. He should never change the formation. He should never, ever have changed the formation. And all of this, well, what if Godfrey wasn't fit? Mina was on the bench. And you're not telling me that both Mina and Godfrey were unfit to start that game. Godfrey was our man of the match against Manchester City. So why is he taken out? Why is he taken out? Why is Tom Davies put in as a like-for-like replacement for Onana? Now, I know, Decore sat on the ball during the warm-up against Manchester City, and I know his attitude's up, a bit up the wall at the moment. I know he probably won't be an Everton player come January, but I think I speak for most Evertonians in saying that Decore was probably the better decision there than Tom Davies. Tom was a rabbit in headlights yesterday. I can barely remember him touching the ball. It was like when, and I don't mean this with any due disrespect to Tom, because I think Tom is what he is. He's a professional footballer. He's there. He's there. He's not. I don't think he's as bad as some people seem to think he is, but he's certainly not a good footballer. He's just there. But it really was like when you'd be on the schoolyard and you'd see the year 11s playing footy and you were a year 8 and they'd let you join in for half an hour. He was just running around, wasn't getting anywhere near the ball, wasn't imposing himself, wasn't doing anything, was effectively getting laughed at by that Brighton team. And for as much as the second half was worrying, and we'll talk about the second half, and for as much as the second half was frustrating and was, upsetting and whatever else verbiage you want to use, the first half for me was worse. Not because it was a worse performance, because it wasn't, because, quite clearly we conceded 3 goals in 6 minutes in the second half, and every goal we've conceded, by the way, is just fucking laughable. Every single one of them is just laughable. I've watched them all again on replay today, and I was sitting there with my dad, and my dad said, it's like watching kids this, and I said to him, don't be disrespectful to kids. It was absolutely laughable, every one of them. I don't understand how professional footballers can perform like that. But the first half for me frustrated me more, because the first half was quite clearly a show to Frank Lampard that set of players are not good enough to play the way that he wants to play. To play progressive attacking football, to play it round, the movement was non-existent. The amount of times Garner, who was awful yesterday, by the way, I still keep seeing people say he had a good game or he was the best of the bad, but he was fucking awful yesterday. Don't get me wrong, they were all atrocious yesterday, absolutely every one of them, but Garner was was one of the worst on the pitch for me by some distance. But again, the first half, the tactic was to try and impose ourselves on the game, was to try and, move the ball forward, create chances, try and, have a go. And we were so flat. The movement was non-existent. Dominic Calvert-Lewin was nowhere in the game. Dwight McNeil is just... I don't even want to have a go at the kid, but I will just say that he shouldn't be playing for Everton Football Club. It's as simple as that. Gray was doing his usual, trying to take players on 55 times and then walking the ball into a defender. And it wasn't horrific defensively. The goal we conceded was horrific. But the fact we had large parts of the ball, the fact that we had large parts of the possession and looked flat, looked meaningless, looked like there was a lack of ideas, looked like there was a lack of invention, looked like there was a lack of anything. That's more worrying for me. Everton conceding 3 goals in 10 minutes in the way that we did is laughable, but it's nothing I'm not used to. The fact that that first half performance was almost the squad that we will finish the rest of the season with. Now, I do think we'll bring in a couple of players in January, and as I said, if we don't, we're 100% down. But that's the worrying thing for me. When Brighton allowed us to have the ball a little bit, and when Brighton went, do you know what, you have a go with us, you attack us, we had nothing. And as I said, Brighton are a decent side, they're a good side, they're in good form at the moment, and they're, if you want to hear me say, they're an amazing club and they ran brilliantly. They are ran brilliantly, and I am jealous of that. We weren't playing Manchester United, we weren't playing, and by Manchester United, I don't mean Manchester United now, I mean Manchester United when they were good. We weren't playing Man City, we weren't playing Arsenal, we weren't playing Liverpool, we were playing Brighton, and they went to us, go ahead, have a go. And this is where I think Frank Lampard showed that he wasn't good enough. It wasn't the second half and conceding the goals. I had a couple of people say, Cam, how can you blame Lampard for the goals we conceded? The players were woeful. I'm not blaming for Lampard for the goals that we conceded. I'm not blaming for Lampard for the fact that it was 4-1 or 4-0 with a minute to go. I'm blaming Lampard for the fact that that first half we had loads of the ball and did nothing. Players were standing still. Players had no idea what they should be doing. There was no movement. There was no invention. There was no drive. It was just passing around the back, and it was stale. It was stale. And all of a sudden, Brighton picked the ball up, one ball across the pitch. Nathan Patterson is caught in absolute dreamland. And you know what? I watched the goal again back today, the first goal. It was like, and it really was, and I'm not just saying this to exaggerate. If you are enjoying, by the way, please hit the like button. If you're new, don't forget to subscribe. It was like watching a game of FIFA against the computer, but you have set the computer on beginner. Patterson just misjudges the ball woefully, inexcusably misjudges the ball. The lad takes one touch, cuts inside. Cody misjudges the ball inexcusably. He drives into the middle and the lad just slots it, and it's 1-0. And you're just sitting there thinking, and I remember thinking at 1-0, I don't see a way back into this. Because I don't look at any one of those Everton players and think they're going to score a goal, or they're going to create a chance, or they're going to provide a bit of magic. I just don't. I don't. There's nobody in that team that we look on, that we rely on. There's nobody in that team that you look to and you think, okay, you know, we could be saved here. And I understand that you can put all of the blame on the players for that. And the Blues says, Cam, all of these things because the players aren't good enough for this level, not because of a manager. I think it's a bit of both. I really do think it's a bit of both. Because the manager showed that he wasn't good enough by trying to do that, knowing full well that the players aren't good enough. What the manager should have done is done the exact same thing as he did against Manchester City. Sit back, 11 men behind the ball, 5 at the back, and hit them on the counter-attack. And they wouldn't have done what they did to us yesterday. And we may have had more chance of winning. I know, like, you get the odd fan saying, why are we going 5 at the back, 11 men behind the ball against Brighton at home? And then the manager could have come out and gone, because you know what, we've just done it against the champions and we got a good point away from home. So now I'm going to do it every week because the players aren't good enough to play any other way. If I'm an Evertonian and I'm sitting here and I've sat there last night and I've watched Everton sit 11 men behind the ball for 90 minutes but win 1-0, I'm sitting here much happier than I am now watching us try and get at teams embarrassingly with no ability or quality or movement or anything whatsoever and Blues 4-1. And I think if Frank Lampard is to keep his job, that's the way he's got to go now. 11 men behind the ball, 5 at the back, and just do what we did against Manchester City. It won't be nice to watch, it won't be pretty to watch, but it will be what any other manager does. If Sean Dyche comes in, that will be what he does. You know, if whoever else comes in, that will be their tactic, because it will be first and foremost, let's be safe. And if the only way these players can play is by sitting everybody behind the ball, then that is what it is. But the first goal was just a shambles, and then we huffed and puffed and again got to half time. Not really a good big chance created. We had a couple of tame shots that were saved comfortably. We got to half time and again, you know, I appreciate the players are a shambles. I appreciate that. There's much bigger issues at this football club, of course I do. But the manager had an opportunity to try and change it, and he didn't. He persisted with it. He persisted with the same team, the same style, the same formation. Now, I'm not saying Ellis Sims is the saviour of Everton Football Club, and I'm not saying Ellis Sims is anywhere near good enough. Ironically, he come on, and within 5 minutes of coming on, he played a wonderful pass that ended up resulting in Everton winning a penalty. But you've brought a lad back from loan there, from Sunderland. You've made a big deal of bringing him back from loan because he was doing all right there, with the obvious intention to give him game time and for him to have an impact on this Everton team between now and the end of the season. And you've had him warming up for 45 minutes before you've brought him on at 4-0 down with 10 minutes to go. What's the point? Why are you bringing Maupay on over Ellis Sims? If you've got no faith that Ellis Sims is better than Neil Maupay, then why have you brought him back from loan? Why? What was the point? Surely the reason for bringing Ellis Sims back is because you believe he's a better option than Neil Maupay. And if you don't believe he's a better option than Neil Maupay, then what is the point? He doesn't change it. Again, we huff and puff a bit in the second half. The second goal is just, again, Garner Gay apparently wasn't a fault for anything yesterday. Throwing himself on the floor, like you're playing FIFA and you've pressed square by accident. One easy ball cuts across. An 18-year-old striker, who'd have thought it? An 18-year-old striker that had been given an opportunity in the Premier League, gets in the right position, easy finish, and at 2-0 down, every one of us knew that's it. It's game over. The third goal that come minutes later is proper slapstick comedy. Proper Friday night gold, British comedy from the 80s or the 70s. Proper slapstick comedy stuff. Tarkovsky throwing his head at it on the floor like a fucking fish out of water. Mikalenko standing 3 miles off him with his hands behind his back. Garner bit effectively going, is it that side, lad? And Solly Marsh scored the easiest goal. And by the way, this is, again, no disrespect, this is mid-table Brighton in second gear. This isn't Liverpool or Man City or teams that you look at and you go, they just do it so quick that it's undefendable. This is a good Brighton team in second gear away from home. A Brighton team that won't do that to anybody else this season. I can guarantee you that. I can guarantee you, with everything I've got, Brighton will not have that easy of a game against anybody else this season. Certainly not away from home. The fourth goal, then, again, I've watched that back, and this for me is the worst one for many reasons. Firstly, why is Dwight McNeil on the pitch? Dwight McNeil is literally on that football pitch for one reason and one reason only, and that is his dead ball deliveries with his left foot. And the fourth goal comes from the fact that his dead ball deliveries with his left foot are nowhere near good enough. It's over everybody. An easy ball gets passed back to Garner, and Garner just... And Bruce says they've already smashed other teams. They've beaten other teams convincingly, but not that easy, mate. Not that easy. And they've not done it in second gear. They didn't. It was a training session. It was a training session for them yesterday. Anybody that was that last half an hour, it was a training session for them. They brought on 5 subs. I think they brought on a couple of kids at the end because it was literally like this game is done and dusted. The fourth goal, I've watched it again multiple times. What is Garner trying to do? He's not trying to pass back to Pickford because the direction of the ball isn't even in the direction of Pickford. So it's not like it's an underhit pass back to Pickford, because then you could say, well, he's underhit the ball, but you could see what he was trying to do. It can't be to Tarkovsky because he looks over his shoulder and you can see that Tarkovsky's got somebody on him. It's just that I can't be arsed having this ball. I'm just going to fucking hit it. It's woeful. The lad goes one-on-one with Pickford, dinks it over him. Tarkovsky gets thrown on the floor in the process. And as I said, all of a sudden, Brighton, and again, no disrespect, like Brighton, brilliant club, do everything the way that it should be done. Everything the way that it should be done. Off the pitch, on the pitch. They did beat Chelsea 4-1, and I watched the game, and it was nowhere near as easy as it was last night for them. Yeah. A Brighton team, you were a decent Premier League side in second gear, have just done that. And I'll go back to the days of David Moyes, and I'll flip the question. I said before that teams would never do that to Everton in those days where we were resilient, where we were strong, where we were good at home. Let me also flip it though and say, how many teams did Everton go to in those years of solidity and where we were managed fairly well and where we were structured fairly well? How many games did we win 4-1 away from home and didn't get out of second gear? Now, you'd have to have a really good memory to tell me that, because there wasn't many. But out of those games that we did, how many of those teams that we beat like that are still in the Premier League to this day and haven't had a period out of the Premier League? You don't leave. You don't lose like that. You don't lose twice to Bournemouth in 1 week. You don't lose to bottom of the table Wolves and stay in the Premier League. You just don't, without drastic change. And again, Philip says, man, this is becoming very depressing. It is. I apologise, but I'm not going to sit here with a smile on my face. Gamma says, basic football skills that players are forgetting because they don't care. The Blues, I understand tactics don't mean a thing. If Patterson leaves the ball in his man like that, did Frank tell him not to do that? I get that. And I get that these players are at fault. As I've said, Garner was abysmal yesterday. Woeful, embarrassing. Patterson was woeful yesterday. Woeful, and to be honest, I know he's picked up an injury now and obviously wish him a speedy recovery, but to be honest, he needed some time out the team. Michalenko was woeful yesterday. Dom, Gray's woeful anyway, period. So was McNeil. Dom was woeful. But my point is that the manager changed the system when it didn't need changing. I don't care whether fans don't want to see us put 11 men behind the ball. I don't care whether fans don't want to see us defend at home against teams that we feel we have a God-given right to go out and beat. We aren't in that position at the moment. Teams like Brighton can turn up in second gear and wipe the floor with us, as they shown yesterday. So every fucking game now has to be 11 men behind the ball, defend, and at the very, very, very least, we'll get a point. Sometimes we'll break on the counter and we'll get 3 points. It's as simple as that. It's as simple as that. And I agree, the players aren't good enough. I also don't think the manager's good enough. And as I said, this club needs ripping to bits from top to bottom. Ripping to bits from top to bottom. And it starts at board level. It really, really does. It starts at board level for me. And I don't care who does it. I don't particularly care who comes in. We just need change. We just absolutely need change. And until we get change, it sounds stupid to say, but we will only be going one way, and that is down. Bill Kenwright, Denise Barrett-Baxendale, Graham Sharp, whoever else is on that board, will relegate Everton this season. Frank Lampard, tactically, the way he's been, the way he's shown, will relegate Everton this season. Those players will relegate Everton this season. It's as simple as that. And you know what? The majority of them, if we are relegated, won't be here, because they'll have clauses in contracts, or they'll say, I'm not a championship player, I'm too good for that, I want to go elsewhere. Good fucking riddance to you, because those players don't get away with it. But again, I'll go back to my point at the start of the video. How many sets of players have we had this same conversation about? How many different managers have we had this same conversation about? The one constant is the criminals at the top of the football club that get away with murder year in, year out. They got away with it last season, and as I said on the instant match reaction last night, lightning doesn't strike twice. I don't think we get away with it this season. We got away with it last season, let's be honest, because we had a kid who gave everything, battled, worked hard, and was a game winner, was able to win games of football, score goals. We haven't got that now. Now, we might have that come the 31st of January. Hopefully we do. But we certainly don't have it now. And as I said yesterday, for me, conceding 3 goals in 10 minutes and in the way it was laughable, and it was a shambles and it wasn't good enough. But it's not me worry. Because more often than not, Tarkowski and Cody will put really solid performances in, and we'll be... That won't happen many times this season. Me worry is the first half. Me worry is the fact that we had a lot of the ball in the first half and we couldn't do anything with it. That's why we'll go down. Not because we conceded 3 in the second half, 4 in the second half, because that won't happen an awful lot. But me worry is that we don't create chances and we don't score goals. And that's what will take us down. If you don't score goals, you don't win games. And we didn't even look like we wanted to. There must have been 2 or 3 occasions yesterday where we pressed, or where we got at them a little bit, or where, we put them under a bit of pressure and they panicked. They kicked the ball out for a throw-in, or they kicked it back to us. And again, this is something that I'm sick of saying, because I say it all the time, year in, year out, season in, season out. Why do we persist on pressing for 2 seconds, forcing a team into a mistake, and then not doing it again? Is it a laziness thing? Is it a fitness thing? Is it a thing that's being told by the manager? 2 or 3 occasions yesterday, Brighton panicked when we pressed at them, and we either won the ball back or we got a set piece from it. But then we just stop. It's just like, well, we won't do that again. Why? I don't get it. I don't understand it. But yeah, as I said, this is a shambles. And this is a shambles that ultimately I don't know how we fix. Because as I said, nothing changes at this football club until we are taken over. The whole board is wiped to bits. And whether or not it's the manager, whether or not the Blues says no one can press all game, I'm not talking about all game, mate. And that's bollocks, because Man City press all game and other teams press all game and Leeds pressed all game. I pressed all game every game last season. I'm not saying press all game every game, but do it more than twice. Show a bit of effort. Show a bit of care. Show that you actually want to get, you want to win the game. You want to create chances. I don't know. I honestly don't know where we go from here. As I said, I honestly don't think anything at this football club changes until the owner sells up and whoever comes in to buy the football club wipes the board. And I honestly don't think that's going to happen until the new stadium, because I can't see Managerial selling until that stadium's built. That's 2 years away. And I think we could be in the Championship. Never mind the Championship, we could potentially be in League One. It's as simple as that. I just don't see a way of fixing it. I really don't. I don't know. We need a miracle. And in typical Everton fashion, we're on the 4th of January and we're being linked with managers. We're not being linked with players. We are being linked with players, but the focus is on the manager. Will the manager keep his job? Will the manager be sacked? Will the manager this? Will the manager that? Will the manager the other? Who are we going to sign? I'm not asked about the manager. If it's going to be Lampard, if it's going to be Dice, if it's going to be Rooney, if it's going to be Minan, I don't care. Who are we signing? Because the manager's the manager. This manager mightn't be good enough. The next manager mightn't be good enough. The next manager might be the best manager we've ever had. Who are we signing? Because ultimately it's the players on the pitch that make the difference. The Blues, I did say we should park the bus earlier, and now we should park the bus. I'm just saying, if we do press, why do we only do it a couple of times? In that first half, the tactic wasn't to park the bus. So if the tactic is to get at them, then why do we press once and then stop? And then not do it for 15 minutes again? But I agree, I don't think we should be pressing anything. I should think it should be 11 men behind the ball and just play for 0-0 every single week. And we might hit teams on a counter and get a goal every now and then, brilliant. But at least we're at least we'll get points on the board. Anyway, there you go. I don't know where we go from here. Well, I do know where we go from here. I go to the Falcon on Friday afternoon to get a pint of Guinness and get on a coach to go to Manchester United. And that's it, because that's what we do. We support the badge. We support the club. But for me, it's very simple. I'm very black and white. I'm autistic as they come. It's very, 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 very simple for me. Nothing changes until this board has been absolutely thrown out. And until the owner's sold and we've got a new ownership. It's as simple as that. Anyway, if you have enjoyed it, please hit the like button. It only takes a second. If you are new to the channel, don't forget to subscribe. We will be back with that Manchester United preview tomorrow, so don't forget to look out for that one. If you are new to the channel and you have joined us over the last couple of days, then please do subscribe. And as I said, if you're enjoying the content, please hit that like button. Join us tomorrow. If you haven't checked out the instant match reaction, it's a lot more emotional than this one, so check it out. But I'm just drained with it, to be honest. I'm drained with it. But big thank you all for watching. Leave a like if you've enjoyed, subscribe if you're new, and we'll see you after.